You've bought the prints, you hung the frames, but when you look around, something still feels off, and it's not exactly the vision you had in your head. Well, I'll tell you now, it's the artwork. Hanging artwork is a lot more technical than people think, but when you know the rules, it can be super easy. So by the end of this video, we will have you ready to take on your walls and win. So let's get you ready for some artwork. Hi guys, I'm Louie. I'm an architect and I've worked as a designer for over 20 years, spanning industries like fashion, architecture, product design. And today we are talking about one of my favorite things, which is wall art. How to pick it, how to frame it, how to hang it, and how to make it feel personal and polished. Okay, I'm super excited, so let's just get right into it, starting with my first tip. So we're gonna start with scale. Yes, scale. I know you've heard this from a million architects and designers, and I talk about it here all the time. But the reason is you cannot do anything without considering scale in interior design. It is like the keystone of the business, okay? So it sounds complicated, it sounds like architecture jargon, but it's really not. It's a simple concept. It just means finding artwork that is the right size for your space. And I will start to prove that it is easy to do by addressing one of the biggest mistakes I see all the time, which is artwork that is much too small for the space. You've got a little piece of artwork on a big wall and it just feels lonely and floating off alone. And we don't want that. We want something that feels anchored, grounded, that connects with our sight lines. So the way you're going to do this is you're going to consider the width of your furniture, and the artwork above it should be 2/3 to 3/4 the width of the furniture. That will avoid the floating in space feeling. It will ground your furniture. It will create clean, organized sight lines throughout your space. And I promise you, you will love the results. Now, here's a practical tip. When I say your artwork should be 2/3 to 3/4 the width of the furniture below it, sometimes you can just go with one big piece, which is beautiful, but it can also be very expensive. So a budget-friendly option would be to create a composition, maybe 2 medium pieces or 3 smaller pieces all together. That will give you the same result and a lot less spending will happen. And some extra tips on scale before we move on to our second tip is if you have tall walls, you want to look for taller pieces or maybe stack pieces together. Now, if you have low ceilings, you want to go for horizontal pieces that will elongate your room. And finally, when in doubt, just go bigger. Okay, big artwork creates energy, it brings a focal point and it's just bold, while smaller artwork creates something intimate and cozy. So neither is wrong, it's just about deciding what you want your room to feel like and then have your artwork reflect that. Real quick before we move on to the next tip, a lot of designers will tell you to cut out craft paper or use painter's tape and just use it to visualize your gallery wall or try out different compositions before hanging up your artwork. And it's a good tip, it works, but I have a different method and it is called the floor and chair method. And I believe it is better and I will explain why. First of all, when you use craft paper or tape, it will not show you color composition or texture. But if you just lie all your artwork down on the ground, stand up on a chair, and look at it from above, you will see the real picture. And that is why I recommend my method. Go ahead and give it a try. All right, so now we're moving on to tip number 2, which is frames. And frames are so much more important than people think. It's not just a nice little outfit, it really does set the tone for your artwork. So the main thing to consider here is that a frame should really enhance and not compete with the artwork. Think of it like a great outfit, okay? It should look great on you, it should be effortless, and you will wear the outfit. The outfit should never, ever wear you. A quick way to find out whether or not your frame is competing with the artwork is to look at it. If your eye will go instinctively to the thing that brings the most attention. So if you start by looking at the frame before you look at the center, then it's probably too much of a frame. You're gonna have to clean it up and make sure that when you look at that artwork, your eyes head straight into the art, which is what you really do want to be looking at. Another thing we should consider, and I'm going to continue with my fashion metaphor here for just another second, is that your outfit needs to match your style. So the same thing applies with frames in your home, right? So if your home is modern and contemporary, then you want frames that'll match it. So consider something like thin black, white, or maybe a light oak frame. That'll work really well. Now, if you have a traditional home, what you want are things that show the mark of time, right? Because tradition is all about heritage. So think about maybe some heirloom pieces, vintage finds that you've had, something that you've inherited, things that will patina over time, like wood or metals. That'll give you a really interesting feature on your wall. And finally, if you're the boho and eclectic type, that's when you want to mix and match the most and just kind of have fun with it. So go thrift shopping, find some different things, mix it in with something modern, mix it in with something old, maybe a little color and texture, and that's how you'll get the more tactile, fun, eclectic vibe that you're looking for. And here's a pro tip: when it comes to matching and mixing different frames, it can get really complicated and it can get messy. So try and keep it a little bit more in line. For example, what you want to do is mix things that have something in common. So maybe different types of wood, different tones of wood could work, or different frame sizes. Like you want all thin frames, and that way you can kind of find something that's cohesive amongst all of them and make it look a lot more harmonious on your wall. Now, there is another part that's very important to consider about your frame, and that is the matting. Now, the matting can also be called the passe-partout, which means go by everywhere in French. It's basically the paper that goes in between the frame and the artwork that kind of gives it that beautiful little outline, and we can have lots of fun with it. My tips in regard to matting are actually pretty simple. So consider white or off-white mats if you want something that'll really elevate your artwork, and are also safe choices. They go well with any style, any place, any color. So it's safe and easy go-to. Next, if you want to go darker with black, it works really well for black and white photography because it gives it that contrast and just kind of makes the image pop. It's great for contemporary, industrial, and modern spaces. And finally, one other option that I love, but it can be very costly, is to kind of color bathe your artwork. So have the frame and the mat in the same color. And I mean the exact same color, not a similar color, exact same color. That's why it gets expensive, but it does look great. And finally, there is a fourth option that I love, which is using acrylic frames. And in those cases, sometimes you don't even need the matting themselves. You just kind of let the piece float inside. It looks super modern. I'm going to show you some images so that you see what I'm talking about. And maybe you'll be, inspired to try it out in your own home. So as of right now, you've chosen your artwork, your frame, your matting, and now what you need is to know how to hang it. So here are some tips on mounts. Float mounting suspends the artwork slightly above the backboard so it looks like it's hovering. It's perfect for handmade pieces, prints with deckled edges, or anything with texture that deserves attention. It's minimal, but dramatic in the best way. Next are shadow boxes. They are deeper frames that allow you to showcase dimensional objects like textiles, pressed flowers, or mixed media pieces. They add depth, literally and visually, and feel luxe and custom. Full bleed or flush mounts place the artwork edge to edge with the frame. No borders, no matting. It's clean, modern, and works great for bold graphic prints or photography. And finally, raised or spacer mounts create a small gap between the art and the glazing, adding a little breathing room without going full float. It's a subtle detail that adds polish, especially for minimalist setups. To sum it up, mounts aren't just about looks, they really are there to show off your artwork's best features and protect them, so make sure to get the right one for the right artwork. As of right now, you have chosen your artwork, your frame, your mount, and now you need to choose glass before we go up and hang it on the wall. So there are three main types of glass. The first is traditional glass, right? It will reflect, but it is the most, I don't know, I think it's the chicest in my opinion. It looks the best. It'll give the artwork more color. Because the other option would be a glare-free glass, and I find that because of the matted texture, it kind of takes a little bit away from the artwork. Now, it can be very practical if you want to avoid glare and reflection. It really will be the best option. And finally, the more budget-friendly option is acrylic glass, which is what you'll get in most cases when you order from somewhere like Society6 or Printful. Just basically these poster shops, they will send you the acrylic glass. Now it looks fine and it is a lot more lightweight and a lot cheaper, so it is the third option you've got. The last and maybe most important tip in this video is to find purpose within your artwork. And that's because, sure, we want the artwork to look pretty, we want it to look aesthetic, we want it to match our spaces, all those things are good and true, but more importantly, we want to feel something. When you put artwork into your home, you are sharing that space with that artwork and you will look at it every day. So why not feel something that means something to you? Now, okay, you don't actually need a ton of money to start collecting art. What you need is to look at the options that are available to you. One of them is online stores. They work with smaller artists, they work with large reproduction prints, but the truth is they have huge archives and I'm sure something fun will pop up that you can bring into your home. Another choice is to kind of make a weekend out of it and go hunting at thrift shops or fairs. and find something that was secondhand that maybe works really well for your space. And my house, I found some kind of mid-century modern bold paintings, like they're very graphic from the 1970s, and I found them at a thrift shop and I love them and I'm going to use them in my home. If you don't want to spend any money at all, you can just frame something that you have in your home. Maybe you have a beautiful letter from a friend or a grandmother who has gorgeous handwriting. Why not put it up? It's sentimental. It'll make you feel nice. Or some pressed flowers, or an object that you bought while you were traveling, but it has something like some kind of sculptural element about it that you want to, you know, display. And finally, a third option is to just go online on Instagram, TikTok, and find all these emerging artists. There are so many talented people out there doing beautiful work. I actually have one that I bought from I think she's a Korean artist living in LA, and I live in Brazil, and I still managed to order it. So I'm gonna go grab it and show it to you guys. All right, I'm back. This is the artwork. Let me just see. Okay. There we go. You guys can tell it's reflecting all my lights, and this is because it is regular glass. It's not glare-free glass. With the glare-free, you wouldn't have this, okay? You would just see the artwork straight away. All right, so let's talk about the frame and the mount. So I have a pretty contemporary house. Of course, I like to mix it up a bit, but most of my frames are very thin and clean, and this one is just a thin white one. For the mat, I went with regular white. The paper itself is actually off-white, so it gives it a little bit of contrast, but still keeps everything very light. And since this is going in the girls' room, I wanted it to be kind of, I don't know, light and airy and breezy, and I think that's what I got with this frame. And finally, I chose this one. You know, the purpose in it is not only because I love the way it looks, I do love the characters. I think her characters are so much fun, and we've got 3 little girls here, which is exactly what I have. I'm a mom of 3, so this means something to me, and I got it on Instagram, and it's gorgeous. So there's the tip for you guys. Finally, you want to match the mood of the artwork to the space where it's going to go. So for example, in your bedroom, you'll most likely want something calming that kind of cools you down for the end of the day, relaxing. Now, in your living room, you want something bold and energetic and graphic because that's where you meet people and talk and, discuss things. So you want something energized. And finally, if you have like fun, funky artwork, something a bit more playful, that would be ideal for kids' rooms or maybe an office. And that way, you just kind of try and match the tone and mood of the artwork to the tone and mood of the space. Before we move on, I want to talk about gallery walls. I've had them, I've loved them, I've definitely taken them down. I'm not a big fan nowadays. Like, I like the aesthetic of it, and I think it can be so much fun, especially if you have very large walls, very wide and tall, and it gets really complicated to just find one huge piece of artwork to put on there because, we don't all have that budget. But the thing with gallery walls, okay, and I'm going to be completely honest here, they never stay where they're intended to stay. Things always tilt. They're never perfectly aligned. They all gather dust. And so what you'll find is that the maintenance with them is a lot. And a lot of the times it would just drive me crazy in my house. Like, I feel like I was always like just kind of arranging things so things would be straight. And if you've got that straight OCD thing, you do not want to be messing with gallery walls, okay? So if you do like them and you do want a video on gallery walls, let me know and I will give you the best tips I've learned from my own gallery walls. But that'll be a whole separate thing. So let me know in the comments below and I'll get back to you guys on that. All right, so by now we have chosen our artwork, framed it to absolute perfection, and we are finally ready to hang it on our walls. Here's how to do it. Okay, so let's start with measurements that work. You're gonna hang art at eye level, so you need to center it around 57 to 60 inches from the floor. Now that's average eye height, but don't get too stuck on numbers. You can feel it out. If you think that it's either too tall or too low, go ahead and fix it. Next, you want to consider the spacing between pieces, so keep 2 to 6 inches between artworks. Bolder frames are a bit heavier, so they benefit from a bit more breathing room, while thinner, more, slim frames can be bunched closer together. But remember, 2 to 6 inches, that's the rule of thumb. Finally, we have creative placement. So not everything needs to be hung. Try leaning a piece on a console or maybe layering it on a shelf or even propping it up on a floor for a casual editorial look. I've done that before. It's super cute, but if you've got kids in the house or pets, it's not the best idea. I just want to tell you guys a quick story before we wrap up. The other day, I went to my best friend's house and she needed help hanging up some artwork, and we were just having a great time, just kind of mixing and matching everything. And we came up with these 2 big pieces and we leaned them on the back of the couch against the wall because they were going to go right above the couch, right? So We went about our business. Later on, another friend comes over. She sits on the couch, and one of the pieces just flips over. It bangs her on the head. Seriously, the glass shattered all over her head. We were terrified. Luckily, nothing really serious happened. She got a few cuts on her feet from little shards of glass. But this just goes to show that you need to be careful, right? Because wall art can be heavy, it can be dangerous, and in this case, somewhat disastrous. So be careful with, safety while you're doing this, while you're hanging stuff so that it doesn't fall on you, so you don't, poke a hole in your finger. Basically, just be careful, okay? They can be heavy and it can be hard. So take your time, find someone to give you a hand, and then get to it. If you need more guidance on how to style your home, I have a super practical and super free home checklist with the link in the description below. You can just go ahead and download it. It's over 30 pages long. It goes room by room. It will give you very helpful schematics on rug sizes, table sizes, wall art, how to hang them, what size wall art for what size bed. And basically, it's just made to make decorating easy and not overwhelming, and to kind of just make your journey a little bit more fun and easy to go through. So if that's interesting to you, go ahead and download it. Also, catch me on Instagram. I give quick tips over there as well. And finally, thank you for sticking with me, and I'll catch you next time.